So you already had a plan in place, or did you have to go above and beyond that? And then how do you kind of shrink that back down? Because a lot of these contracts is depending on what you are, what they are, is sometimes you can grow, but you don't go down.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You can't go down.
Yeah.
So what kind of contracts and applications do you have that, did you think about some of that stuff and read through some of those agreements, are because of the fact the time frame you're in, you need to get it done quickly.
Yeah,
Right. So
you
some
just
of
kind
that
of signed on the dotted line without thinking
exactly.
of the
What's the impact
consequences.
of that?
Yeah.
Right.
Girls, just to I've just remembered you asked me to record it, so I have just hit record.
Oh, thank you.
I can't believe I remembered.
No, I'm glad you did.
Oh,
we're furiously writing. Well, Hilari's younger than me, so she'll be typing, but I still pen and paper it. Okay. Excellent. So it's really looking at, I suppose, what you're using in the, I don't like this expression, but the new normal or the temporary normal that we're living in now, and seeing if you're future-proofed, really,
right.
to some extent. Okay.
Yeah, and as the item says, virtualization and cloud is the biggest piece here. That's where you're going to see majority go, because it's the easiest to implement.
Yeah.
Right. But what are the licensing impacts that are associated with it?
Yeah.
You may not have thought of those when you first had to go into this. You just said, let's do it, figure it out later.
Yeah.
Right?
And what's going to be the impact on your long-term business? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So next is capture.
Yeah, this is super important for SAM for SAM work, right? Because everything goes back to documentation.
Okay.
Right? So whether it's the entitlements that you have that you've purchased, everything comes down to having something that documents you have rights to it. And in some of these cases, because of the fact, again, because of the situation we were in or are in, right? Process may have not been followed to do this.
Okay.
Right? Normal process could have been circumvented because sometimes process
gets in the way. Yeah.
It gets in the way. Right. So so some of that is what was documented to, if it went around process, right? What documentation do you have of it?
Yeah. So what documents do you have, even though they're not the right ones? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How can you go back and say, okay, this is how we did that, right? The audit trail to go backwards, even though we were on a process, we didn't follow these steps, right?
Yeah.
How do we go do that? Because maybe that becomes a new exception policy, for occasions like this where, pandemic exception. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Some kind of more agile process is required in extraordinary times. Okay.
So Larry, is that kind of like an audit trail? So you're sort of saying this is the company policy for this, but because of this is what we did and why.
Yeah, so internal audit for absolutely. I mean, most of the time your policies and processes are in place. You have to have, it's usually for SOX compliancy, whatever it is, right? And sometimes you have to go, if you can go around that or need to go around that, you should be able to audit what you did, right? In order to understand any impacts that may come later.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so third up is review. So that's looking at the reviewing contract for new software purchases okay, so seeing what you've signed up for, basically.
Yeah, this is pretty, simply put, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of these, hey, fine, here's my signature, here's my money, let's get this going, right?
Okay.
What did you actually sign? Did you get, there's a commercial here, is that, we were tiny typed, right? Oh my God, we were tiny typed. And that's just because, did you read that disclosure at the bottom, the really fine
Well,
print?
I know what I'm like, when I accept the terms and conditions and everything I download, you just don't even look, do you?
You don't. We were click, 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 go, right? And some of these cases that can get you in a bad position, And I don't want to say that software publishers are looking out for themselves, but I will say software publishers aren't looking out for you, right?
Okay.
But
well, they've got businesses to run. Let's not,
absolutely,
yeah.
I understand it. They want to make a profit, and they're gonna, it's a car salesman. If I can sell it to you for 10 grand, I don't want you to talk me down to 5, right? So I'm going to make more money off of 10 versus 5. So I get the process, I understand it, but you also have to understand that what did you get yourself into? Can you get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Is there that what is the details around breaking that contract perhaps, right? If you don't need it anymore, right? Did you sign a 3-year deal for something you're going to use for 6 months?
Yeah.
Right. So because the pricing was better, what's your options to get out of that contract?
Yeah, you've got a lower monthly fee if it's SaaS based, and okay. And how is that complicated by businesses? I can only guess at this, but suddenly we're all working from home. You're the marketing department or the HR department, and you can't do your job without downloading some cloud-based software. So those lines of businesses are just buying things, and then presumably the IT team and the procurement divisions have to kind of get their heads around and review all those contracts. Is that complicated? Is that something that we should put in?
Well, I mean, for business needs that are now versus then or later, usually that's where you're looking at. Sometimes your standardization is thrown out the window, or your processes are thrown out the window.
So we can talk about that in the capture thing, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that I have to do because this is the way I need to work now, right? That is again, I think this creates the ability for you to to expand your business continuity plan on above and beyond just, hey, what if there's an earthquake or a tornado, or a disaster, it's something. This thrust in, hey, what if nobody can come into our offices whatsoever? How do we still work? 20 years ago, this wouldn't be possible.
No, I know. I was thinking about that. Now, we'd all be putting our feet up in the garden.
One of the things we've kind of seen as well is where you have sort of strict IT processes in place, administration processes in place, just to keep businesses running. In a lot of cases, they've just sort of thrown them out the window, and they've just given people sort of the buy or leave to get what they want when they want.
Yeah. They've had to rip up those procedures, haven't they? Because they're just
the biggest one of the biggest things that ITAM organization can do, especially from a software asset management position, is make the business implement the removal of local admin rights, right? From end user computing devices, and that's because that way they can't install anything they're not supposed to. But in this time and age, the demand says, well, maybe we need to loosen that a little bit because of the fact that if we have everybody that needs this installed, that we, how are we going to do this from a implementation standpoint? We have to figure out an automated way to do this across, outside of our network, even potentially. It may be it may be easier just to say, here, we'll loosen admin rights for you. And you'll install it. Right.
Well, my husband works for Tesco, the large supermarket chain here, and 10 weeks ago when we both started working from home, it was no problem for me because we're a small business and we work all over the place all the time. He was having a nightmare because he just couldn't access anything because of Tesco's rules. So I understand that entirely.
Yeah. No.
Okay, great.
A lot of that is also defined by information security, because a lot of breaches happen from third-party computers that don't have the same restrictions in place that are accessing that network that is restricted, and they don't have the same restrictions in place for them. And that's where I forgot one of the viruses that hit last year before, is that's how it was accessed, is through a third-party computer. Target's breach or something like that was a third-party computer.
There's a massive trade-off, isn't there, between security and convenience. Okay, great. All right, so I think I've got the review one. How about plan, Larry?
Yeah, planning is just purchases. I mean, this is really what I mean when you go back to normal, right? Will some of these be part of the roadmap going forward?
Yeah.
Right. So, or I mean, it's reviewing kind of, but then you make your review. Then what's the plan going forward, right? So planning is basically what is going to continue and what has to be, taken back, and how do you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
How do you take that away from people that have been using it for 6 months?
Yeah, good luck.
Right. So, yeah, usually in my experience, once somebody has something, it's like, pulling teeth without them wanting it to take it away. Right.
Yeah.
It is, no, I need that. Well, you haven't opened it up in 6 months. No, I still need it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's like clearing out my kids' toy boxes.
Yeah.
Something they haven't seen for 3 years. It's suddenly
Good
their favorite
analogy
toy.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
analogy. Like trying to give anything away from your kid's toy box.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, that's all it really is a plan for that.
And I imagine, yeah, in some applications, perhaps they would even want to increase it afterwards. So that they've just sort of
Yeah.
seen the light from the pandemic, perhaps, and
Well,
just
and
know that they can start. Yeah.
yeah, and maybe this is it changes the business. It's a culture change for the business. You know what?
Mm,
A lot of people saw that they didn't think they could work from home. It was
mm,
remote jobs wasn't something they thought about because it wouldn't work. I guarantee they just proved it did. And so maybe
mm.
that thinking changes, and therefore maybe we need to do remote more, a couple days a week or something. Or some
Yeah.
people can stay remote, and that way we don't have to lease as many offices that we need
Yeah.
and save money that way, or offset the cost between leasing and power consumption and air conditioning and heating versus application, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting.
God, that's a whole story on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, that one's really good.
Yeah,
It makes you sound really strategic because it's not just about software licensing. I mean, obviously that is strategic, but that's really like the whole of business culture, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
I mean, cost savings. I mean, from a remote standpoint, your cost savings can be, how much does it cost for you to heat a building? How much does it cost for you to lease it, to furnish it, to do all that stuff versus potentially maybe, hey, I need to give you access to a VPN.
Mm.
And also
Yeah.
seeing the output from staff, because I guess that's the other thing as well, is if you've got staff that are now working from home, do you have some sort of way of measuring the efficiency of the staff working from home? Is there a sort of a drop in output?
I think it's actually an increase in output, honestly.
Yeah, no, I do definitely,
Yeah.
but there'll be industries, and I think it might depend on in inverted commas a type of staff. If you're in an industry where you've got a lot of young people working, then there might be that sort of slide towards maybe working a little bit less. But I think certainly as you get older and longer in the tooth, maybe it goes the other way. I don't know whether there's some sort of analysis on different industries and where that's changed.
It would be interesting to see because it feels like since quarantine or staying, shelter in place, whatever we want to call it, has happened, it seems like the standard work week has suddenly kind of increased to 50 or 60 hours.
Yeah.
From the people that I've met and talked to, personally.
Well, and one of the things that I found, and just my experience working in an office and then working remote, right? So the days I worked remote, I was more productive. And the reason that is really because of those drive-bys at work, right? Those people that walk by or walk-bys, whatever you want to call them, they come by, oh, hey, Larry, how's it going? Right? I need to talk to you about this, right? And you spend 10, 15 minutes talking to them, and that happens multiple times a day. And therefore, you're not doing what you should be working on, right? Now, I would say from remote, you get pings, right, as well. So there is some distraction as well. It's not a physical person coming by anymore, but I think it's less, right? You can I didn't see that. So,
Yeah, you can ignore people.
yeah, exactly. You can't ignore somebody sitting in your cube.
Yeah.
But
right?
you do also have that, you get your cup of coffee in the morning at 8 o'clock and you go, oh, just have a little look at my emails.
Right.
And you end up starting work at 8 o'clock.
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's all a conspiracy to make us work harder. That's what I've decided.
Well, my favorite, speaking of drive-bys, are the folks that come by your desk and they're like, "Did you see the email I just sent you?"
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a conversation that I think that companies will start having, especially ones that were really against remote working,
yeah.
because they just didn't think it was work,
Yeah.
right? And I think they need to look at cost impact from a whole perspective, not just, hey, this person, worked 9 hours versus 8 hours normally, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
How
on
much
this
did
on this section, I think we can
Yep.
talk about you can plan your software, your future software needs, and what you need to buy and what you can decrease and what you might want to increase. But it needs to be part of an overall kind of business
Absolutely.
culture.
Yep.
Yeah. Decision, and that's great because that really helps that your audience, so the reader, make themselves feel like that they're strategically important, so they can go to their managers and talk about issues in the terms that they understand rather than in the weeds of software licensing. So I think that's a great one. And we could, I think, even make a blog out of that one separately.
Definitely. Absolutely. That'd be a real interesting read, I think, as well. Not just for our industry, I think for all industries.
Yeah, you put us under pressure now, Kate, for being an interesting read. We'll do our best.
But it would be really good if you've got businesses where staff are trying to push or have been trying to push for a work from home culture. That potentially would back up their story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry.
Okay. So next is optimize with a Z.
See, I didn't even notice that, honestly.
You're blind to them.
Yeah. If it had an S in there, I guarantee I want to notice it again.
Yeah. So this is making sure that you've got the right licenses for the right users at the right level and on the right service. Okay.
Yeah, this is SAM 101. If it's not a compliance issue that you're looking for, right? Then it is a cost optimization you're looking for. Is it set up correctly, and is our licensing structure deployed the way it should be to optimize the licensing usage and entitlements versus the cost, or do I need to change that, right? So that's just a SAM process that is done out again, either compliance you're looking for, that's the first. I want to make sure I'm in compliance, but then two, am I utilizing the entitlements?
Am I wasting my money? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. But that's great, because normally I think we've only been working with Livingstone for a few weeks, so I won't purport to be an expert, but normally optimize is kind of the first thing in the process we talk about. So we've got all these other things first. So I think it's a nice story from that point of view. Okay. And then we have prioritize.
Can I just chuck something into the optimize one? Larry, in the optimize one, I guess one of the pointers with that would be, if you've sort of scattergun and bought licenses on an individual basis, can there be, or would there be, opportunities to consolidate those licenses?
There could be. Again, there may be language in there that's not going to allow you to do it, but yeah. So one of the things from just take an example from Microsoft licensing and virtualization, the OS and data center licenses versus are you deploying them to a cluster that has 18 hosts, or are you utilizing that on a cluster that has 2, right? Well, standard says that you can use that for 2, but the data center license is you can have as many as you want. So why would you not put that on your biggest clusters, right? And so that from an optimization standpoint, right, you want to make sure that if you can consolidate those to make sense, where it does make sense, you're doing it. Where you might not do that right now because you're just saying, hey, we just got to get out there so people can use it, right?
Yeah.
But looking at it further, or maybe when you start looking, reviewing and then planning, right? The optimization itself comes from, well, how do I, now that I know what I have, now that I know what the details is of it, right, of that is, sorry,
Yeah.
the details of it is, but what can I do to potentially utilize that in a better way, right? Is there a chance to, hey, maybe I need to apply this way in order to cover more people, more installs based on the licensing language that's within that contract.
Okay.
Again, but when in a SAM role, you're doing that all the time. So
yeah,
this isn't something new to a SAM position or ITAM itself. You're doing that. You're trying to optimize that. Contract negotiations, whatever it is, you're trying to optimize your best bang for your buck there. But it's just a matter of some of that outside process and policy purchases may need to look at it further. So
it's
with
under
multiple
a particular
use
microscope.
Yeah. Maybe you can install it on 2 computers, right, versus 1. So you have Kate that has it installed on her laptop and her desktop at work, right? That's 1 license, not 2, but you're counting it as 2.
Yeah, but you just don't know until you kind of do the comparison between utilization and licenses. Okay, great. Thank you for that question, Kate. So to prioritize publishers. So this is, I guess, you've got a list of approved publishers and that's been torn up and you need to relook at it and decide who's the most important to,
Maybe because of this, if you're prioritize publishers, usually in my experience is based off of spend, audit risk, right? Those are top 2 in normal cases, right? So that in this world that we're living in, it is going to benefit the publishers in a major way to start looking at this after this, right? So that may, because of what you had to do during this pandemic, you may have had, that may shift that thinking or those publishers rankings because you had to invest more in something else than you normally would have to, and it raises that cost and that spend. So maybe that spend, maybe their audit aggression, right, is a medium, right, but yet you're spending a lot of money with them, right, in a time
so
frame.
if they come knocking, it's going to cost you. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, guess what? We may have a huge revenue stream here by just going and knocking on the doors of some of our top 10 or top 50 biggest purchasers, right?
Yeah.
You don't know, but it may have shifted that prioritization of those. Maybe Microsoft is no longer the king of the roost there, right? Maybe it's now, Amazon Web Services, right?
Yeah.
Or another SaaS application, ServiceNow, not ServiceNow, well, Salesforce, who knows?
Salesforce, yeah.
But it may have shifted that list.
Yeah, and then you've got like the likes of Zoom and everybody that seems to have come from nowhere, and are in the media, which is Larry and I's main focus most of the time on a daily basis, with kind of the chaos of it all, not being able to encrypt like loads of things. So who knows what's going to happen with them? It's almost like they're running before they can walk. Okay, great. And then security is your next point. Is that patching vulnerabilities and all that stuff?
So I mean, so here's the thing. A lot of times with some of these applications, they have to go through a long list of information security, internal security, I mean, IT security stuff that normally they would have to go through a whole gambit of that stuff, right? And maybe because of that, because of the situation, it didn't go through all that. So maybe you should go back and do some of that stuff, especially if you're taking your data and putting it in somebody else's care, right?
Yes. If you put it all in the cloud.
Yeah, we all know the impact of GPRD and what that is from a UK perspective, how it affects the US. We have the California data privacy law here as well, which is pretty stringent. There's data is your man, that is if you don't think of it as an asset, you should be thinking of it as an asset because it is a huge asset, one of your biggest assets, right? And because the fact that not only can you, without it, you can't do much of anything, right? Without data. And if you lose it, pretty much are going to get in a lot of trouble depending on whose data it is, right? And what type of data. So one of the things you want to make sure is that, hey, let's go back over this from a security perspective and look at what would we miss by going around the process? What potentially could we have missed, and how does it impact us, right? And you may have some recourse to go back to those publishers and vendors and say, hey, we need to relook at this because of this fact, right?
You're exposing us to a risk that we're not comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe
okay. And could that be part of the license negotiation? Has that ever happened where you'd go back to a publisher and say, hey, this isn't, this is against our policy, but I've got these licenses, but I didn't realize. Yeah.
Used with a SaaS application or a cloud-based application, information security there's a questionnaire you're going to be working through, right? It has to be vetted, right? But in this, hey, let's spin it up and get it done, right? If you've already done that for a vendor that you're going to increase volume in, great. But you may have skipped it for somebody new because you had to get it in, right? Some of that stuff may not have been fully vetted. All I'm saying is maybe you should go back and look at some of that stuff, especially how you may get out of the contract. You may cancel the contract with them, right? It was just for that short time. One of the biggest things I've seen is, what do they do with your data after you leave?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Where's your data going? Are they destroying it? How are they destroying it? Where does it go? Can I get that data back? Are you going to give it back to me for storage? What's going to happen to it? Right?
Yeah.
Because is it going to sit on their tape drives for 10 years? So now your data is on their drives that you don't have a contract with.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So,
okay, that's great. Excellent. So 8 is prepare for audits.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, if you audited before on it, guess what? You're going to be audited now on it. More likely, right? I mean, they know it's a huge revenue stream for publishers. I don't blame them for doing it. I don't like them for doing it because it's a pain in the butt, but I understand it because they have the right to audit per the contract you signed, right? That's their right. You said you have to do it, so you might as well prepare for it. And so the biggest thing you can do here is just, hey, when you're prioritizing that list, maybe you should look at what your position is, right, on that. And if you don't know a position, you better do it quickly, because one of the biggest impacts, in my experience, when it comes to audit is response time. If you take forever to respond, they know they got you, because
they can smell a rat.
Scrambling to find it, right? If you were present, oh yeah, here you go, thanks, next question, right? They know more than likely they're not going to find much.
Interesting. Okay. We've written some blogs over here already about audit risks. changing because of the pandemic. So we could even link back to one of those blogs in the actual ebook for online if people are reading it online. Yeah. But the response time one is interesting. I haven't heard that before, so that is really good. Okay, great. And then finally we have expand. So I guess this is more the sales message. Yeah. Okay.
If you don't want to do it, let us.
Yeah. Partner with an expert.
I knew there'd be a sales pitch in there. So.
Yeah, I was going to
It's got to be.
Yeah. No, this is this may be beyond what your team is capable of doing. It may be beyond what your team has the ability to do from just a simple time standpoint, right? And so if you do need help, there's options. You don't want to just let it lie.
And I guess with more, you
can, right? Because you need to be prepared. So.
Yeah, I guess there's more vendors, more applications. There's just generally more complication. Yeah, you're not really going to expect those teams to be expanded and extra headcount in the future economic conditions that we're going to face. Yeah,
you're going to have publishers audit that have never audited you before. Why? Because they know I may have some extra money to make here. People went around policy and process, and things were. Why don't we go back and see and make sure that they're using it the way they should be using it versus the way that they may be using it, I guess, in order to see that is there recourse, right? Maybe they won't charge you a fee. They'll charge you at your normal cost, but it is additional revenue to them,
Yeah, they might not fine you, but they're going to get more licenses as a result, and your spend's going to go up. And
a lot of audits have a condition in there. If you're over X% of license spend, they charge you, an additional 3% or something, right? Okay. So if you're those audit clauses in your contracts would be great to know about right now.
You need to know what they are. Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure that was one of some of the audit blogs we did too. That is one of the key things, is knowing and understanding what their rights to audit. Yeah.
Actually, that's what we haven't written that one yet, but that is on our list to do. We've been kind of stringing them out, if I'm honest, with different installments. But that's on the list for a future one. Yeah, great. Wow, that was fantastic. Anything else you think we should cover as we write this?
I'm sure this is not the end-all be-all list. I will say that. I'm sure that, there's other people that have different thoughts on this. This was just our idea of where do you
Starting
start?
Point. Yeah.
Where do you start? Some people may not even thinking about any of it, but I guarantee at least one or two on here have crossed their mind once or twice through this whole ordeal, especially from ITAM perspective, right? Because if they're not thinking about it, some of this stuff should be top of your mind. The fact that normally they would be sitting in front of some of this process, and if process is not being followed, then they may not know about it. So how do they report on something they don't know?
Yeah, it's like the unknown unknowns conundrum, isn't it? Yeah.
Is this it's shadow IT from an aspect that you don't know about it, but somebody does, right? So,
yeah.
But
there is so much in this. It's really interesting. I'm just wondering, Chris, do you think it would be worth just throwing this at Hugh and see if Hugh wants to sort of throw some suggestions in, because he's quite good with stuff like this, just from a consultative perspective.
Yeah, I don't think at this stage it can hurt. We don't want to have 18 points. I think 9 is probably but there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't ask Hugh to see whether there's anything missing that was drop dead important. So yeah, it might be worth sending it to Hugh and see what he says.
Yeah.
And then obviously we can input anything he comes up with through to Claire.
Yeah, I'll ping him a note.
What's Hugh's job?
Hugh does absolutely everything.
I was gonna say.
Secretly runs the company in the back. No, he's one of our sort of pre-sales consultants, but he's been in the industry for years and years and years, and he has worked on both sides of the table with sort of companies that audit, companies that deliver SAM services. He's delivered SAM. He's just slept and breathed software asset management and software licensing. But because he's been in touch with so many different companies and worked on so many different projects, he's got loads and loads of different stories. Yeah.
Okay.
A font of knowledge.
Good. No, that's great. Yeah, let us know if he has any additions. We were going to start writing this later in the week to have you a draft to look at next week. That's just for the guide, if you like, because once we get that straight, then we can start doing the other bits and bobs like the blog, and if that works for you. Okay. If I get stuck, Larry, I have your email.
Yeah.
So I'll just ping you a question. I won't ping you too much, like I'm bothering you at your desk.
Well, I'm in Texas, so I think I'm 6 hours
okay
in the UK.
Yeah.
I want to
Okay.
say 6. So
That sounds about right.
Right now, AM, where I'm at.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Then 6. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I won't do it too early in the day then.
Well, you can send it whenever you want. It's just a matter of when I'm online for answer.
Okay. No, that's really good. I think we've got plenty to work with. I have copious notes. So, yeah. Thank you. That was great.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you all for doing it for us, and I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah. And you know, we don't intend to write War and Peace at all, because the idea is we give people just enough information to go, oh, that's really interesting. Oh my God, I can't do that myself.
No,
and they get to point 9.
No, that's the key. That's what we're trying to do with the new website, is absolute minimum.
Yeah, it's just shop window stuff. Yeah,
it's just don't keep talking. Just say what's required and get on with it, and then we follow it up. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, some people like to read War and Peace, but most people just give it to me straight up. I don't need you to explain it to me in 5 different languages, or just what's the bottom line here.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. And hopefully I've got this recording right. So I'm not sure how you pick the recording up, but I'll have to have a mess around with it and work it out. So
so Kate, it captures it in stream, and because you're recording it, you can actually download and send it out. So in most cases, if you just send out like a link to it, it just you have to give the ability of somebody to see it, but you can actually go in the stream and download the video content and then share that through a file. I think it's MP4 format.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool. I'll have a mess around with it. I've done them for a couple of salespeople who recorded calls and then sent them to their customers. So I can download it and put it into Vidyard and then embed it into an email like that. So cool. Well, hopefully that's worked.
Yeah. It's just a nice to have. I think we probably got enough in notes, but and to be honest, this slide prompts us no end anyway with the topics, but there were some nice anecdotes in there, so it's always handy to have a recording. Okay, well, I'll leave you to your days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Larry for doing that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.